Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, go.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls of the planet and beyond, to Paranormal Now. I'm your grateful host, Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight, joining us is author and psychic medium William Stillman, as well as Ron Kirkwood, author of Too Much for Human Endurance, the George Spangler Farm Hospitals, and the Battle of Gettysburg. And we'll be discussing the surprising revelations thanks to William's abilities to tap into the other side, residual messaging and spirits of long past, all while at historical sites with retired writer and editor Ron Kirkwood. And to be clear, the book, Too Much for Human Endurance, was Ron's book. William Stillman is an author of numerous books. You want to go to his website and find out more about him. I highly implore you. He is a fantastic human being. He's been on the show before, and his website is williamstillman.com. Now, tonight we'll be finding ourselves in the crossroads of liminal time-space continuum and the fascinating history that is the Civil War. Now, earlier we did schedule Dr. Joseph Burkes to come on. He will not be joining us, so we'll be jumping right into this fascinating conversation in just a moment. As usual, please share your thoughts and experiences with us during or after the show on Facebook.com/ParanormalNowRadio, Twitter @paranormal_now, and we are streaming live video. So for all those listeners on KGRA, if you want to see this in live Technicolor action, you can go to youtube.com/paranormalpop. And I'll also drop the links for that in the KGRA chat room as well. And of course, on Twitter @paranormal_now. You can also comment and ask your questions on both Facebook and YouTube, wherever you're watching the stream, and we'll see it here and we can highlight and ask those questions for you. Second, Paranormal Radio app lines are open tonight as well in the second hour. So to call in and ask our guest your questions, just call 85-KGRA Live. That's 855-472-5483 for the Paranormal Radio app hotline. So we have a lot going on tonight. This should be really, really fun. This is Bill Skywatcher, producer, and my own. It's our second attempt at a live video stream, and so we're gonna roll with it and hopefully get some feedback from you all. If you have any comments or questions in general, but technically, if you do notice anything, we'd love to hear what you have to say because we want to improve upon this platform as best as we can as we continue to grow. So I'm going to bring on Dr. Joseph Burkes. Dr. Burkes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. We made it just in time, so I'm glad you're here to join us. So we are live, and a few weeks ago, actually about a month ago, we were on the show, and we had discussed COVID. So a lot has developed in this month, and I really just wanted to get your take on where we are in this situation nationally and globally. What does Dr. Burkes think about our situation?
Well, we're just in the beginning of a worldwide tragedy, which is going to uproot the lives of practically every person on the planet. And doctors, patients, ordinary citizens are faced with impossible situation. The rapid spread of the disease has caused very drastic efforts to limit its terror, and great economic sacrifices have been made in order to prevent our hospital systems from being completely overloaded in the United States. This has avoided the terrible decisions that doctors had to make in Spain and Italy, where literally people were dying for want of medical care because the system was basically submerged in a tsunami of death and destruction. Doctors were forced. In Spain, I was told anyone over the age of 65 was not allowed on a ventilator. They just were losing too many people too much. They wanted to make decisions which allowed some of their patients to survive. Fortunately, we haven't gotten to that point yet in this country. although it was very close in New York City. And despite the shutdowns that have occurred, the disease will continue to spread in the United States. It will probably accelerate with the push for opening up limited aspects of our economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect if things go as predicted, unfortunately, other shutdowns will occur sporadically across the country in various regions. So I don't have good news for the short term. For the long term, we're going to do very well.
Mm-hmm.
This disease has a mortality rate of somewhere between 1% going down to maybe 1/10 of 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of thousands of people are going to die in the next few months all over the world, and tens of thousands will die in the United States. So, but we will come out of this with the development of vaccine or the development of herd immunity.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be a lot of young people who will do just well. There'll be plenty of survivors. It won't be the kind of doom and gloom scenario Hollywood likes to present in some of their medical pandemic horror movies. We will get through this, although many of the high-risk patients will not.
Right. Now, the numbers were projected to be much, much higher, possibly, based on certain models. So in New York State, did we do a good job with keeping those numbers down with our actions, or is it just that the disease itself wasn't as bad as we thought it would be?
I'm not sure what you mean when you say how bad we thought it would be. My understanding is that in New York, over 20,000 people have died. That's pretty bad.
Oh, well, we were looking at numbers in the hundreds of thousands
for New York.
For New York, that was our fear, and I personally think that New Yorkers have done a good job with wearing their masks, taking care of their cleanliness and distancing. But I just thought, is that flattening of the curve because of our actions, or is it because the disease wasn't quite as lethal or effective as
I think the answer is both. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If New York had not been shut down when it was, if there had been additional delays, tens of thousands more would have died. Public transportation. I'm a basically born New Yorker. I lived in New York throughout my childhood and adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
And subway cars without face masks, with rebreathing the same ventilation, was basically a breeding ground for the COVID-19. And so I would say every action that was taken saved lives. There's no doubt about it. Yael, dear, could you move the dog? Yeah. She's protesting her condition. So she's also locked in too. She's protesting being locked in, so we'll have to let her out. Okay,
that's all right. Well, what about just our general well-being? Because, when people are going through stress, some of the best ways to manage your stress is to get outdoors, and get fresh air. And I wonder, if we're not actually going out and interacting and touching surfaces and being exposed to bacteria and viruses, are our immune systems compromised in general? Does the immune system response drop at all, or does it stay?
No. That's human biology is such that resting at home is not going to limit your immune response whatsoever. So I put that away. That's just we are incredibly robust in our ability to fight off a wide range of viruses. And whether you're resting at home for a week or a month or a year, as long as you have good nutrition and your spirits are up as best you can maintain them under these trying conditions, your immunity will be tip-top. If you starve, however, if you become terribly depressed, those are things that we do know will lower your immune function. So it really is important for people, if they can't get outside and blow off steam outside, anything you can do to reduce stress at home, exercising, meditation, all these activities, spending time with your loved ones, if not physically, then on the phone several hours a day, and being mentally active as possible. All these things will maintain your immunity just fine.
Okay, and do we have any concerns about mutation?
Well, this is not a science fiction movie again. So, for all those readers of Michael Crichton's, what was the name of that? Andromeda strain. The viruses do mutate all the time, but these are usually small changes. And although there are several strains of the virus that have been identified, from all the medical reports that I've read, they are not clinically distinct. These viruses are kissing cousins from the original strain, and it's likely that major changes in the clinical picture will not emerge on the basis of mutation. Now, granted, we don't know that much about this virus. Our medical knowledge goes back 5-6 months max. So that could change, but all the indications are that mutations that will, like in the original movie Andromeda strain, Michael Crichton's medical horror book, it won't be mutating so they can dissolve the rubber tubing in jet aircraft and things like that. Forget that. It's not going to happen.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel a little bit better. Thank you, Dr. Burkes.
All right.
Do you have anything you'd like to leave us with before you go in regard to the disease or humanity?
I think this, I touched upon it the last time, and I'll touch upon it again. There's going to be a lot of blaming who was responsible for this, and there's plenty of room to pass the blame around. None of us are guilt-free. Medical profession, we were not prepared. Our government leaders, for sure. But I leave the audience again with counsel that one of the reasons this and the other SARS epidemic occurred was because of the cruel treatment of animals that are stuffed into wet markets and crowded together, where the diseases can jump from animal to humans. There are plenty of non-meat sources of protein, and it's very good medical advice for the individual to shift to a plant-based diet, and to society to move away from meat, which to a large extent is responsible for what we're experiencing now.
Well, you're certainly not going to get a protest from me in that regard.
Right.
Though I am mostly vegan, on occasion, under the influence of someone very special in my life, I will have some sushi. Is that okay? Are we cool with that?
Yeah, I'm not here to judge. I'm here to give sound medical and societal advice as best I can.
All right, fair enough. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Burkes. I'm really glad to have you on, and take care for you and yours.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Yes, and I also like to add before we move on with our main guests tonight, I get videos often, conspiracy theory videos, and I don't mind, because we discuss a lot on this program that is kind of out there, and just because something's out there doesn't mean it should be dismissed. But even if you can find something like a nugget of truth in someone's conspiracy theory, that doesn't mean the whole thing holds up. And on Facebook, people are sharing things all the time without fact checking. And I implore all of you, if something appears incredible, if it's something that's shocking, if it's something that is going to completely change your paradigm, maybe it's true, but maybe it's not. And it's your responsibility to go online, fact check, look up whoever the focus of the feature might be on. Is that person legitimate? What's their history? And actually look for documentation before we just go ahead and copy and share. I think it's our responsibility as citizens to do our own work. And so what I'll do is I'm totally cool with private messaging between people and having conversations about those conspiracy theories. But for me, I just feel like it's irresponsible to share it on my Facebook page as if it's news. So just something to keep in mind, and I'm not judging in general, but just hope that everyone out there is responsible, because there is a lot of fear. And just as you can look at the media And the media makes money off of fear mongering. Absolutely. And they don't always cover things accurately. That's totally true. They also omit information depending on the channel you're watching and the topic. Well, that's also true of these videos and these articles that you are posting. Just because someone says, I'm anti-mainstream media, doesn't mean they are offering you 100% the truth, because they may have an agenda themselves. And maybe that's just clickbait for YouTube views, selling a book or a documentary, right? So just keep that in mind, that everybody has an agenda. The question is it a good agenda or is it a self-serving agenda? So I'll leave you with that, and I'll bring on our guest, which I'm very excited tonight. This is a really fun topic. This is something we've not talked about on Paranormal Now ever. And so thank you, William, for introducing me to Ron, so we can talk about the Civil War, Gettysburg, but within the context of psychic abilities. And for me, this is a new field. So William Stillman, psychic medium, is the internationally known award-winning author of the Autism and the God Connection book trilogy that explores aspects of spiritual giftedness in many people with autism. These books encompass Autism and the God Connection, The Soul of Autism, The Autism Prophecies. His other books include Under Spiritual Siege, How Ghosts and Demons Affect Us, and How to Combat Them. Conversations with Dogs, a psychic reveals what our canine companions have to say and how you can talk to them too. And William was on the show to discuss his book, The Secret Language of Spirit, Understanding Spirit Communication in Our Everyday Lives. Since 2004, Stillman has worked professionally as a psychic medium and spiritual counselor. His accuracy in discerning the truth and making predictions that come to fruition have been acclaimed by his clients as truly extraordinary. He has been consulted on missing person and unsolved homicide cases. He also volunteers his time as an investigative resource to the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association. William has been interviewed on numerous radio shows of a paranormal nature, including Coast to Coast AM, the most listened to overnight radio program in North America. He has twice been interviewed on the web series Char Vision by internationally renowned psychic medium Char Margolis, who called Stillman really fascinating. And he has been a guest on the popular YouTube series Swedenborg and Life. Stillman has been a repeated guest speaker for Lily Dale Assembly near Jamestown, New York, the oldest spiritual community in our country. Stillman's website is williamsstillman.com. Ron Kirkwood, first-time guest, is the author of Too Much for Human Endurance, the George Spangler Farm Hospitals, and the Battle of Gettysburg, which was published by Savas BD in hardcover June 2019 and went into its second printing in October. Kirkwood argues in Too Much for the Human Endurance that the George Spangler Farm was the most important farm in the Battle of Gettysburg, revealing factors that have long been overlooked. The book also presents newly found information about Confederate Brig General Louis A. Armistead's time at Spangler, the Granite Schoolhouse Hospital, the Spanglers, the Artillery Reserve, and stories of the suffering and heroism of the surgeons, nurses, wounded and mortally wounded at the two hospitals on Spangler's land. The names, wound, and treatment of more than 1,400 men at the Corps Hospital are listed in the book. Kirkwood is retired after a 40-year career as an editor and writer in newspapers and magazines, including USA Today, the Baltimore Sun, the Harrisburg Patriot News, and the York, PA Daily Record. He edited national magazines for USA Today Sports and was National Football League editor for USA Today Sports Weekly. He won numerous state, regional, and national writing and editing awards during his career and managed the copy desk in Harrisburg when the newspaper won a Pulitzer Prize in 2012. Kirkwood has been a Gettysburg Foundation guide at the George Spangler Farm Civil War Field Hospital site since it opened in 2013. He lives in York, PA with his wife of 43 years, Barbara. Welcome both to Paranormal Now.
Hi, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. This is really exciting. So, William, I think I'll let you sort of set the stage for how you came into Ron Kirkwood's historical investigations, but with a psychic medium's twist.
Well, I think it was a mutual coming together. Ron and I actually met backstage in the green room of a Harrisburg television station. We were both there to do separate segments of the same program, and we just got to chatting, and he told me what he was there to do, and I told him who I was and what I was about. And before we left, we exchanged contact information, and I said, you know, if you are interested, at no cost to you, I'm happy to get together and go out to Gettysburg and walk around a little bit and see if there's anything that we can pick up. So we actually set a date to go out to the Spangler Farm.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, this is not something that I had ever done before, and I know it's not something Ron has ever done before, but I had never before read an environment. My specialty is people and sometimes dogs. So it was quite the experience and quite a revelation.
Right. So just really quick, because you mentioned it, do you have a stronger connection with humans or dogs or animals?
Actually, people are my specialty, but as you mentioned, I did write a book about dogs, and I do occasionally work with animals, and people bring their pets to me to get insights on what their pets are thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
But as I said, I had never before really read or picked up information about a place or an environment, and it was quite a powerful experience, if I may say so myself.
Yeah. Now, Ron, what about yourself? Because you, were not dipping in the waters of the paranormal necessarily before you met William, and I wonder, was that a comfortable, uncomfortable transition for you?
When we were talking in the green room, like Bill had mentioned, he seemed like a nice, kind, caring individual that I could trust. I had never really had much experience or paid any attention even to psychic mediums. I was ambivalent / non-believer. But even though I wrote the book on the George Spangler Farm with Civil War stories and research, that was a long time ago and it's incomplete. So I thought, well, I like this guy and I trust this guy. Maybe he can find some things that I couldn't find out there. And so let's give it a shot. And we decided to go out, and I went from a non-believer to strongly believing everything that Bill Stillman tells me.
And everything?
I had a life-changing experience that day. The way he went in, and he can see things through other people's eyes, male or female. He can feel, he can smell, he can see, all of it. And when we went into that barn, and he started right away, he started to smell alcohol, wondering why they would have alcohol at a hospital. And he mentioned brandy. And brandy and sherry and whiskey were commonly used in Civil War hospitals to revive guys, to calm them down. It was a common treatment. So right from the start, he doesn't know any. He didn't even know it was a Civil War hospital. I just told him when we met that I wrote a book about a farm, and would he like to come and explore the farm with me and see what he could find and maybe fill in some gaps.
Yeah.
And I could verify 80 to 90% of the things he found that day, and then the other 10 to 20% made perfect sense.
So what I'm going to do for the listeners and for the viewers right now, I'm going to play a little clip that I just personally enjoyed, and that is Ghosts of Devil's Den on William Stillman's YouTube channel, if you want to check that out as well. And it's Gettysburg, September 18th, 2019. It just tickled me because your reaction, Ron, was so genuine. So if everyone just listens in, I'm going to play this for you now.
It's, I'm being told to use the phrase controlled chaos.
I'm not even sure how controlled it was.
So it's all here under the auspices of this is the game plan, but then things go completely awry. You know, it's like once you get here, it's like we throw the playbook out the window.
Can I tell you where a lot of the cannons were? Do you not want to know that?
Not just yet, maybe, but I'm seeing men also running toward us as well.
That's brilliant.
Yep, from over that way.
Yes.
They're running this way. And
Yes.
in my gut, I'm feeling like I want to run the other way. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this, but I know I have to.
That happened here. The running away.
The running away? Really?
The running away.
Here, where we're standing,
Yes.
is what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling so chicken, like I'm being told I'm being chicken. And does that phrase go back that far? Being called chicken?
I don't know about that. I know coward.
Chickens? It's not coward. It's no. You're a chicken. You're being a chicken, and but I'm feeling like I can't. This is more than what I signed up for, and I can't go through with it.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, that's just one sample, right? Some of the experiences that you've had together, which you've documented on YouTube. Now, Ron, before we continue down that road, I'm curious, what was your, do you have a passion for the Civil War? How did you get interested just in that part of the history in general first?
I've been reading books on the Civil War for decades. I wouldn't call myself a historian like the Rangers and the guys, and there are a lot of amateur historians, but I know a fairly decent amount. And what Bill was describing there was really one of the many really phenomenal things. We were looking up at a hill called Little Round Top, and there had been a lot of fighting there for over an hour or two, and a lot of charges by Alabama men up this Little Round Top, and they never could quite take it. And the guys defending that one particular part of Little Round Top from the 20th Maine, they were out of ammunitions, and they put their bayonets on, and they did a charge down the hill, and the Confederates just took off running. They weren't ready to fight anymore. There's something about bayonets that are up close bayonets that the men just ran from. So they ran down the hill, and they ran where Bill and I were, and they ran past where Bill and I were. So if they were sissies, there could have been 1,000 sissies, but I don't think they were sissies at all, the way they had charged up Little Round Top. But the way Bill could just tell which direction they had come down Little Round Top, and they had retreated right past us. I think these were brave fighters, but they had a strong fight, lost a lot of men, and it was time to go. The bayonets were out.
Alan, could we back up just a little bit and go back to talking about the Spangler Farm?
Absolutely, yeah.
Would you mind?
No,
because the videos that we posted to YouTube were done after the fact, and Ron was generous enough to and interested enough to want to continue to explore other sites. So we had made two other trips subsequent to going out to the Spangler Farm. And then we had another trip planned that we had to cancel because of being sequestered. But as Ron was saying, neither one of us, I think, really knew what to expect when we were at the farm, and it was so powerful. I mean, we were on the verge of tears a couple of times because the emotion of the experience was almost palpable, almost tangible in the air. And I certainly did not expect to be overwhelmed in the way that I was, and for Ron to be there, as I know he doesn't like the word historian, but I think in reference to the Spangler Farm, I would say that he is. But for Ron to be there and to be verifying, just minutia of things that we were picking up beyond the smell of the alcohol, there was a woman named Mary who showed herself as sort of the Florence Nightingale to the fellas that were suffering and dying, and the doctor who wasn't a doctor but acted in the capacity of a doctor and liked being called Doc, and the blood that was dripping through the floorboards of the second floor down to the first floor, and the thunderstorm, all of these collective bits of minutia that Ron was able to verify. I think it was just such a profound experience, and I'm so touched and flattered that Ron called it life altering. But when we were debriefing after the walkthrough, we were regretting that we hadn't had the foresight to have someone with a video camera with us. Ron audio recorded it, and he has a transcription of that recording. But that was the impetus for deciding to go back out again, because it was just a very powerful experience. So I'm indebted to Ron, and I know it's a little bit outside of his wheelhouse and comfort zone to do that, but I think it's been truly fascinating, and the response from people on YouTube has been overwhelmingly positive.
Right. Well, it's a little bit out of your wheelhouse too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I had not done anything like it before, and really didn't know what to expect, and got more than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Bill figured out that they used maggots to treat gangrene. The maggots would eat the dead blood, the dead tissue, I mean.
You say figure out, you mean?
He figured out that they used he saw it. Bill saw on his arm gangrene with maggots.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked, did they use maggots medicinally? And they did. He asked if there was a waterway around with leeches, that they would go get leeches for the blood, like for swellings, they would use leeches on that. Yeah. He saw the stable, which was the most seriously wounded men, and the last rites being given, and the blood and the human feces and the vomit. He saw it. He smelled it. He saw this Mary going through, comforting these boys and closing their eyes. Every step of he found where they, I didn't tell him anything, nothing. And he found where the amputation tables were, and where the arms and the limbs came off, and where they were stacked up. And he would describe it. He just found things. He found the cemetery. He found the well. He found the smokehouse.
I'm just starting to get a little emotional.
It's an unbelievable skill. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Well, all these things you're listing, is this just?
I learned an incredible.
All these things you're listing, is this just one location, or are we talking about multiple locations?
No, it was just the one location. It was at the Spangler Farm.
Okay.
On our very first visit.
That's intense.
It was intense. Like, I'm starting to get emotional now just hearing Ron describe it.
Now, Ron, what was your sensation as Bill was speaking to you and sharing these revelations?
I got a lot of chills.
Okay.
Many times I commented to Bill, well, there come the chills again. And I think one time he asked me if I was okay. So I don't think I must have looked okay. And I wasn't okay, because I was believing what I was hearing in disbelief, if that makes any sense, that he could be so skilled to find.
If I could I just add something?
Sure, yeah.
Anytime a psychic or a psychic medium does their work, it's only speculation unless and until someone is able to validate and verify the information. So I think that's what made it so powerful, is I had no idea if what I was communicating and what I was sensing was at all authentic, until Ron, who was right there with me, was saying, yes, that happened, or yes, that's a very strong possibility that could have happened. And I think, as he was saying, there was a point at which we were both getting rather emotional, and that may have been why I asked him if he was okay, because I was feeling it too, for sure.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to understand Ron's interest in history before having met yourself. Because when you're on site, there are elements that you bring up in your vision, in your sense of smell and your feelings that Ron can confirm. But then there are instances where you discover something that Ron was unsure of on site. Can you give us some examples of anything were able to fact check later after you left the site?
Yeah, I don't know if it was specific to the Spangler site, but I know that when we made trips to other locations, that there were a number of things. And again, for some reason, I don't know why, it just sort of seems like random minutia. But there were a number of things that Ron was able to research and fact check after the fact and was able to verify. And so I'll let him talk about those.
Sure.
When we were at the slaughter pen by the Devil's Den, he asked if they use hand grenades, hand-thrown explosive devices. So I checked on that, and they did. They had hand grenades. They weren't very effective, but they had hand grenades. When we were walking over at the Grove, which is a haunted site right next to the battlefield, he asked about, was hair ever used to make wreaths back in that era? And I had never ever heard of such a thing, but research showed that they had. I didn't know that they used kites. I knew they used balloons to scout, but Bill saw kites when we were at Sachs Bridge, and I did some research on that. Sure enough, they used kites in the Civil War.
And what can you explain exactly how the kites were utilized?
They were for signals, probably different colors for a different meaning, just like with flags that they used.
Tell about the dog, Ron.
The dog. Oh, the dog. Bill asked if dogs delivered messages in the Civil War. Now, I knew that many regiments had dogs. I didn't know specifically if they used them to send messages, but apparently they did. We found that out later, too.
Because we were standing in a field together, and I saw, quote unquote, a dog run past us, and it had something in its mouth. And so that prompted me to ask him, did they use dogs as messengers? And he researched it and found out that indeed they had.
See, I would have never thought that either. I mean, I know that dogs are very much a part of our life and hunting and training, but as far as messengers go, I would imagine, I would assume that would be problematic, but clearly if they were using them, it was effective.
Yeah. But at that same spot at the Trossel farm, he asked if there was somebody there recording the event, like a newspaper reporter, somebody like that. And there was. One of the men of the 9th Massachusetts Battery, he was a drummer boy, but he was also a talented artist. He drew many pictures of the battle, of the fighting at the Trossel farm. So Bill literally saw the guy drawing the pictures, some of which I used in my book because they were based at the Spangler farm. So to see that, I don't understand it at all, but I believe it.
You used one of the pictures on the cover of your book, didn't you?
I did. Yes, but that was, I did, from the 9th Massachusetts Battery. I have many from that battery in the book. But that one that you asked about, that is...
that image right there?
That image is of the farm. Okay. The 9th Massachusetts were based at Spangler on July 2nd and 3rd, 1863. When they came back to Gettysburg in 1804, Richard Holland made some drawings of Spangler while he was there. In 1884, they were going to place their monuments. And so I used that on the cover of my book. I used one of his on the back of my book. And the one that Bill saw at the Trossel farm, that artist, I used his drawing inside the book. And the National Park Service just got that drawing 2 or 3 years ago, which was unbelievably good timing for me. It came in from a family and they told me about it. They knew I was working on the book. And all of a sudden I have gone from not knowing what's going to be on the book's cover to having a wonderful drawing of it.
Yeah.
I have to also mention that the first time that Ron and I met out at the farm, he gave me an inscribed copy of his book, which I have yet to read. And he knows that because I don't want to be tainted or influenced by knowing too much until I know that we're done with the farm. And he keeps saying he wants to go back. So
Yeah, I do.
That's what
So
I.
you can't read it yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, eventually you have to, though, right? You have to read the book. I mean, you can't ignore information forever, right?
I think with another visit or so, I think we'll be done with the farm, and then I will require him to read the book then.
Because I wonder, William, if you do read after you've done your initial work, where everything is a surprise, it's new. Perhaps after you read more, you do your own research, right, on a specific area. Then maybe does that help open up more information for you? Are you able to link things together in a new way that you wouldn't be able to just going in cold?
that's a good question.
Have you experienced it before, or this is all new?
You're asking Ron.
No, I'm asking you. Yeah.
Oh, you're asking me.
Yeah. Will you have that trove, a new trove of information if you go back to a site that you've already read?
Well, I tend to develop amnesia about most of what I do almost as soon after I do it.
Mhm.
So the only way that I would be able to go back to the site with a new perspective would be if I were to revisit the videos that we made. I thought you were asking Ron that question, which I would be interested to hear his response about if the information has colored his perspective in any way.
I actually will answer that with a question.
Okay.
Would you go back to the farm and be able to answer specific questions from me or somebody else? Do you have that ability? Like, where was the kitchen?
Yeah.
Where did they bury the limbs? Is that just too far out there?
You never know. I don't know. You know, I'm always willing to give it the good old, college try, but I can never guarantee.
It's worth a try.
Yeah, I can never promise or guarantee anything, but
I know that when we were out there, Bill told me that he wouldn't want to do it again because it's tainted now, but I would still love to do it again just to see.
there's a lot of unpleasant imagery that comes with visiting sites like that as well. And fortunately for me, it comes in very quick flashes. Sometimes if it's too unpleasant, it's shown to me almost like a cartoon or an animation. So it's there's a little bit of a buffer there to soften it. But I mean, Ron knows enough that we've been to enough places where, sometimes it gets rather unpleasant.
This place, the Spangler Barn, is just so horrible. The men suffered so much. It was just horrible. And Bill gets into that. He gets in it in such a way that he can reveal it and talk about it and feel for these guys. And so many times out there, he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, fellas. I'm so sorry." He really has empathy for what they're feeling, and he can feel what they're feeling too. So I told Bill that since I started researching the book, I really wanted to get into the Spangler Barn. I wanted to be there. I wanted my mind to take me there, and it never could because I had nothing to relate it to. Bill took me inside that barn in 1863.
Yeah, Bill, what do you experience? I mean, can you explain different senses and how that information is fed to you or filtered?
So, right. It's really very simple. It is a magnification of all the senses. And so your listeners and your viewers are going to be familiar with the clairs, right? So the French words that describe the magnification of all the senses. It's clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. So I'm getting mental imagery in the form of pictures, movies, words, phrases, occasionally a name or an initial. It's clairaudience, which means I'm getting internal noises, sounds, music, occasionally voices. It's clairalliance, which is fleeting sense and aromas. It's clairsentience, which is a gut feeling and a knowingness, and without knowing how you know, you just know. And people who have children or pets or very close friends know that's called mother's intuition. And there's clairgustance, which is a fleeting taste of something on the tongue. And if memory serves, it's probably been more than one occasion out in Gettysburg where I may have tasted blood in my mouth. I know that's happened on a number of occasions. So it's really simply a magnification of all of the senses and receiving that input. Now, I do also want to stress with people that before Ron and I did any work, and actually before I signed on with you all this evening, I always say a blessing and a prayer and set intentions. And I think that's very important to be spiritually protected. And I think it also sets a tone of reverence and respect for the work that follows. And so it's not something that we just walked into this in a way that was reckless or thrill-seeking. We approached it with great respect.
Well, I just want to share this comment from Jessica. She said, "I would love to go on tour of Gettysburg with both of you." How about it, guys? Are you going to do tours?
Well, there are probably, I don't know how many videos on YouTube now where there are some virtual tours with us. So that's an option for Jessica.
All right. Well, we were speaking off air, and I was gonna bring this up later, but might as well bring it up now. What about the two of you working on a book together?
Well, it would be an honor because Bill has done so many wonderful books, and I've edited a little bit of his work, and he's an excellent writer. And he's mentioned something about Gettysburg. Now, there are a lot of ghosts of Gettysburg books out there right now. So we would, if we did something like that, it would have not be that. It'd have to be from the psychic medium angle. And I think once doors open up, I would like to explore in Gettysburg a little bit to see if there's actually any books on the psychic medium angle. And if not, I think it would be great to do, because in my mind, nothing is more important than getting Bill's skills known out there.
Well, I feel the
he's
same.
National caliber.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Ron. I feel the same about Ron. And I think a book from that angle would be a completely unique perspective. And I could envision like each chapter being a different site. And then maybe at the conclusion of each chapter would be, all of the fact checking and the validations through the research. And I don't think that's been done before, to be honest.
We can find out. And I think if we did that, going to many sites, we might want to bring along an expert at that site.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It would add another element to it, especially when you need to have something confirmed. So now in the near the railroad tracks, there was a lot going on there. And Bill, you're talking about this. What was the word you used? Roadway, or you saw something where you thought that maybe there was like food was being delivered.
A connector? Did you say connector?
I forget what the word they used, but
so I don't. That's my amnesia. I don't. I'm going to have to defer to Ron about what that was.
Well, you said that it was more than just a dirt road. That it was almost like a highway, where supplies were brought, and then Ron walks you over a little further, and then this cliff appears. There's a railroad down below, and you were totally surprised. You were there for the first time to that site. I mean, that was a real time revelation caught on camera, which I thought was super cool. Now, I get it. People could totally just say you guys staged this.
Sure.
So what would your reaction to that argument be?
That we staged it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people can, the work speaks for itself. People can look at it and draw their own conclusions. I'm not in the business of compelling anyone to believe anything that they're not ready for. And Ron has been also clear in saying that he's a skeptic and remains a skeptic, and but has made an exception where I'm concerned. So that's very flattering, and I feel very honored. And I'm a skeptic also. I have very, very high standards for myself, and I would caution people about making blanket statements about people who do work that I do, in the same way that we might make blanket statements about politicians or attorneys or used car salesmen. I think you have to assess each individual on his or her own merit.
Mhm.
And I would just
I don't think either of us.
themselves.
I don't think either of us would ever want to stage anything. We want the real thing. We want the honesty of it, the honesty of the find. And that's why you have no idea where we are. I mean, I don't tell you where I'm taking you. I don't tell you what happened there. And you get out of the car and you have to figure it out.
When you were
So I think that
William,
makes it work.
when you were on site, you mentioned the number 68. Did you ever figure out what that meant?
I didn't. I looked at that.
Because I think you speculated it could be like a cavalry number or something along those lines, but you weren't sure.
I checked all of the regiments that were around there, and there were no 68s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but there could be something else. There could have been some regiment could have had 68 casualties, 68 dead there.
That's interesting.
I tend to believe there is a 68 involved there. That was only one of many impressive ones at the railroad cut. He said he felt like he was watching that fight around there from up above, and then he asked about like a cupola or a steeple or something. Well, that's where the general who was in charge of the cavalry there was watching from this cupola. So he got that. He asked if an important general was killed nearby. He was. General Reynolds was killed just across the road in some woods there. So who does that? Who can find those things like that? Bill can.
The one piece from that visit that is outstanding to me was, I think, Ron, and correct me if I have the wrong site, but I was picking up that there were soldiers who were African American, and in particular, I got the name Moses. And I don't know if there are records that would still exist that could reflect that, but
So in that location where the railroad was, I think, Ron, you said that at that time, African Americans were not fighting yet.
I think most of them came later.
Okay, and what year? What year was that?
They might have been fighting in the South then. Again, I'm not the official historian, but that's what I would think.
Okay, yeah. Well, see, that's the interesting thing too, is because people need to understand that if you're a psychic medium, I mean, if you're getting 80% hits, it's really good.
Yeah.
So if something is just like a little off the mark, it doesn't, invalidate one's ability. And I think that's something important to keep in mind, especially if people go to the YouTube page on William Stillman's and check out these videos. Because there were a couple instances where Bill, you weren't sure, Ron, you weren't sure. And like 68, you haven't figured out what that meant yet. And maybe you never will. Maybe that's a personal number to somebody that you're picking up on. And you'll just never get a confirmation on that. But overall, I mean, your hits are crazy high.
Yeah, they are
phenomenal.
They are. He is phenomenal. I wish I could understand it.
We're gonna go to Bill in just a moment, but Ron, I am curious. With all this in mind, are you a spiritual person at all? Do you have religious convictions that this can conflict with, or it's okay with?
I am a religious person, and I think this goes along with it. Is there another dimension where they hang? I don't understand Bill's part of it. I don't think any part of what Bill and I have been doing would be any kind of a conflict with religion or Christianity. Maybe a scholar in it could tell me differently. Just connecting with others who are obviously out there. I mean, as Spangler Bill was talking to folks, he was listening to them. I would say something and Bill would talk to them and they would say, no, that's not right. So I don't think that goes against Christianity.
Okay, great.
That
Well,
was an interesting question.
We'll come
Sorry.
right at the end of the side of this break, Bill, and we'll get your take on that as well.
Thank you.
How your spiritual life plays into all this. I'm curious. We've touched on that before a little bit in the past, but in this context, it's really exciting, and that's what I love about this program and the things that we discuss here. It's always novel. It's always new, because every time someone comes to one aspect of a paranormal subject, inevitably some other metaphysical or phenomenon is adjacent to that. So there's so much to explore. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. We'll be right back. This is Gettysburg, Civil War, Psychic Medium Connections. So many more fascinations to tell you. We'll be right back.
Nancy Vernon here with Ozark Mountain Publishing, coming to you from the Ozark Mountains of Northwest Arkansas. We are a publisher of New Age, metaphysical, spiritual, nonfiction books, as well as digital downloads, DVDs, and audiobooks. This is also the home of all of Dolores Cannon's titles. The company was founded in 1992 and has been bringing to you a varied selection of titles covering many different subjects. This year, we have added a new imprint to our company, Big Sandy Press, that will be publishing titles from the genres of historical fiction and nonfiction, paranormal fiction, and more. So be sure to visit our website, ozarkmt.com, and explore all the new and exciting authors and titles coming your way.
For more information about Ozark Mountain Publishing or their events, call 800-935-0045. That's 800-935-0045, or visit their website at ozarkmt.com. That's ozarkmt.com.
Hey, this check is wrong. I worked a holiday and 7 hours of overtime. Not getting paid correctly is a real pain. It could also hurt our boss if our company provides out-of-compliance checks. That's right. Construction companies doing business with the government can get fined, or officials of the companies can go to jail if the checks aren't right. It's a law. The Davis-Bacon Act has 30 compliance issues for every check, but there is an easy way for construction companies to be in compliance. EMARS offers Compliant Client, a web-based system that finds and corrects all 30 of the possible out-of-compliance check issues. Users of Compliant Client report an 80% savings in time and money. Running a weekly payroll usually takes about 5 minutes. All 15,000 plus clients of EMARS have never had a legal compliance issue. Plus, they sleep better on check day. Contact EMARS at emarsinc.com or call 480-595-0466.
Every 2 seconds, someone needs blood. Whether it's a natural disaster or one single child suffering from illness, the American Red Cross stands ready to supply blood when it's most needed. But blood is a perishable product. Therefore, it must continuously be replenished. You can safely donate blood every 56 days. The need is constant and patients are waiting. Call your American Red Cross at 1-800-GIVE-LIFE to schedule your life-saving appointment. Please give blood today. Patients are depending on you.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Mainstream media's most.
Stand by. We're coming back, Alan. All right, we're coming back in 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. And taking us out of the break was Septembrio. If you want to find out more about their music, just go to Septembrio, spelled with a Y.com. So Ron, I was trying to message you in between, and you did respond. I got a comment. Someone said that they thought they heard a dog breathing. That's an odd thing, right? And neither of you have a dog.
No.
Very strange. And I don't know where that came from. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Heidi Hollis, but she has a very you knew okay.
Oh,
So
yes, I know her well.
she and I, we talk a lot, and she tells me these experiences she has, and she was on the show recently, and we talked specifically about her odd experiences with technology. And if you're familiar with ghost hunting and this sort of thing, technology itself can be a medium. And I just wonder, if that was some sort of clairaudient apparition through tech. Is that new for you, William? Have you heard of anything?
Is it new for me? Oh my goodness, no, it happens constantly. Constantly. But in fact, if you go back and look at the video that Ron and I did when we were out at Sachs Covered Bridge, it happened then, and it was captured on the video. And the cameraman was using a special type of microphone for which it should not have happened. So we did get a couple of audio anomalies then.
Okay. And Ron, what about yourself? Have you had any odd experiences outside of, going out into the fields and doing this work with William?
With Bill, or by myself, or with my family?
Yeah, and in general, have you ever had experiences that you really couldn't quite explain?
I never was really a believer in ghosts either until my daughter, about 15 years ago, was doing a school report on the ghosts of Gettysburg, and she needed me to drive her to the battlefield. And it was a cold November night, the night before Thanksgiving, and so much happened. Our batteries kept dying. The energy kept being sucked out of them. I told Bill we went to Sachs Bridge that night, and there was just us there and another couple that we didn't know. And the wife said to her husband, honey, take my picture. There's something on my back. And so we looked, and there was nothing on her back. He took the picture, and then there was a big cloud of mist on her back. And that, Bill, that was on the other side of the bridge, where we didn't go. Triangular Field, which is on the other side of Devil's Den. I walked down with my daughter, smelled cigar smoke very strongly. There was nobody else around. Later on, another couple came and joined us, and the lady said, sir, are you smoking a cigar? My favorite one, there's a road that, Bill, you and I walked on for a little bit between Little Round Top and Devil's Den. I was hiking late in the day with a friend of mine, and it was getting dark, and the shadows from the trees were over the road. And I saw this guy, looked like he was dressed in all black, walking up toward us about 100 yards away. And then as he got a little closer, he made a left turn, and within 2 steps, he vanished into thin air. Now, I've never considered myself a person with skills who can sense these things. Mm-hmm. And I never really believed, but so much has happened to me. So we ran down there to that site. My friend didn't see it. We looked behind all the rocks. We looked in the tall grass. There was nobody there. This was a black shadow figure. I don't understand what they are, but I know I saw one. And I'm a skeptic, and I know I saw one. And I told my daughter about it later and told her where it was. And she said that's the exact location where she saw a black shadow figure digging in a grave. And I looked up a map that I have after that, and there were some graves around there. I can't analyze this in any way. I don't know what these things mean. I don't know why I saw a black shadow figure and my daughter saw one burying something. But I know I saw it.
Well, I mean, that's Heidi Hollis's field of specialty. William, have you experienced shadow people yourself?
Not recently, but I may have talked about some experiences I had as a child previously on your program with something very, very nefarious that would show up every night as I was trying to fall asleep and was trying to seduce me into recruitment at a very vulnerable and extremely challenging period of time in my life. But as I said, I feel very well insulated and very well protected because this is not just something that I do on a whim. This is something for which I am working at every day throughout each day to be as fit and as authentic as possible. And that also requires being spiritually grounded. So as I said before the break, before Ron and I did anything, we joined hands. I said the Lord's Prayer. I set intentions. I set intentions about protecting ourselves. And, with the exception of feeling a bit nauseated and weak-kneed in the bridge, and yes, I didn't want to walk the entire length of the bridge for that reason. I have a healthy respect for the negative energies, and they are well aware of who I am. And I think that there's a respect there for me as well.
I actually stopped doing that ghost hunting once a year in October because I didn't want to. It was getting to the point where I was understanding it more, and I didn't want to bring something home with me because I understood that could actually happen.
Is that inevitable, though, William? I mean, like you said, there's grounding that you can do, prayers. Can you foolproof prevent bringing an entity home?
Well, again, I would encourage people to take a look at the video that Ron and I did out at Sachs Covered Bridge in Gettysburg, because we talk about that concept, and apparently that bridge is sort of a hotspot and a magnet for attracting thrill seekers and kids in particular who are looking to get spooked or to I don't know what went on out there. I suspect there's been a lot of things that are very untoward that have played out there. But if you don't go into it with a respect and with feeling as though you are spiritually protected, you are in essence throwing out a welcome mat, the same as it would be using a Ouija board very carelessly or recklessly. It's the same concept. And so there is definitely some very negative, nefarious energy there. I think when we were there, I was picking up on a manifestation of that energy in the form of a winged creature that I saw in my mind's eye on the roof of the bridge. And then, neither one of us was able to validate that for certain, but someone then commented on YouTube on that video, and they did validate it. They said that they knew someone who had seen a winged creature inside the bridge in the rafters.
Right. Well, winged creatures, that's pretty commonplace as far as paranormal goes, right?
I don't know. That's the first time
saw anything. What are they?
Well,
what is a black winged creature?
Well, I mean, if there are various descriptions of the Mothman from the Mothman prophecies, if you're familiar with that, then you have the Jersey Devil in the Pine Barrens where I grew up. We had a guest on recently on Sunday. We did a paranormal for National Paranormal Day. We had just a fun open round table, and he brought up the Papagawa, which is a cryptid from Africa that has large wings, almost bat-like, very dark. Just time after time, people witness these things. So, not to veer too far off topic, when you're on site, William, do you and you're tapping into, you're trying to find something from the past, right? Is that a residual energy, or are you actually getting information from spirits?
That's an excellent question, and there's probably room for debate there. But in my opinion and in my experience, walking the grounds of historical sites such as Ron and I have out at Gettysburg, I would very much like to think, knowing what I know about heaven and the afterlife and souls, I would very much like to think that this many years later, there are no quote unquote ghosts, that there are no souls that have not transitioned successfully at this point in time. And so to the best of my recollection, what I was experiencing at the various locations was really sort of like watching snippets of documentaries or snippets of video replays from the past. And so I was experiencing bits and pieces of what had happened previously. I don't know that I was actually feeling as though I was communing in real time with anyone's spirit, so to speak, or soul, but it was more like relaying information that I was getting from these little replays or video clips, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. So I guess if that's the case, you don't feel like there's any danger from the spirits or anger in that regard.
No, not personally.
Mm-hmm.
So for others, maybe.
Yeah.
For other people, maybe.
I think it depends upon your intentions and your approach. I think, again, I'll use the bridge as an example. If you're going out there and it's late at night and your intention is maybe to drink beer and to enact some kind of ritual or use a Ouija board, you're asking for trouble.
Right. And you're not. So you're going to these places and you're just open to receiving information. But I guess.
Well, here's the thing, Alan. It's on my terms. It doesn't control me. I control it. And so, and Ron was very respectful of that. When, halfway through the bridge, I said, I don't think I can go the rest of the way. And can we turn back?
Right.
And that was me demonstrating respect for the energy and for the historical site.
So, what if, and I don't mean to keep pounding on this, but I guess I am. What if there are ghosts on that site, and you're doing this work?
I mean, there's always look. I'm not an expert or an authority on this by any means, and I'm only speaking from my personal experience. I don't socialize or commiserate with other people that do what I do. I don't read other people's books. So I just do me. But I suppose that's a possibility. As I said, I would like to think that this many years later that there are no lost souls or wandering souls, as someone's commenting here. I would like to think that this many years later, they have all figured out how to transition, or they have been encouraged by others to transition, and that there are no lingering energies that are unsure of who they are, where they are, what they should be doing.
There are businesses in Gettysburg, ghost hunting businesses. They're not allowed on the battlefield. So they go to places like the bridge, and they go to the place like the Grove, where you and I went that one time, that piece of woods, and they take spirit boxes and all sorts of gear with them. And they say, I'm not a professional ghost hunter. I used to do it for fun with a digital camera. They say they talk. They say they can talk to the spirits on their spirit boxes, through their divining rods, I think they're called, and they have other devices. So those are the groups that are out at the bridge and at the Grove pretty much on a regular basis.
If I may interject something, since you mentioned the Grove, Ron, and people can watch this in the video that we did about the Grove. One of the things that I thought was so curious was when we were standing in the Grove, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it felt to me as though it was a very large circle, and we were near the center of the circle. And what was so fascinating to me was that there were no birds or squirrels, at least making noise, that we could hear in the circle. And yet when we stepped outside of the circle, that's when it seemed as though things returned to normal. And our cameraman even made a comment about that as well.
Right. I didn't notice it until you said it, but it was absolutely correct. You even said the birds stayed away. They have a respect for whatever was in there.
All right, guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So Bill, you're stuck on a video for a moment until we get that.
No. Hope everyone watching can bear it.
If we have Bill on the video, can I insert something about Bill?
Oh, please do. Yeah.
One of the many extraordinary things that strikes me about his skills on the battlefield is he can pick up things from different eras at the same place. When we were at Sachs Bridge, he picked up Union men bivouacked on the stream before the battle. After the battle, he picked up on the Confederates retreating through the bridge, and possibly, we don't know for sure, but possibly Confederate deserters or somebody hiding under the bridge. He picked up on all that, and then he switched it over to more recent times when he spotted that dark figure, winged figure on top of the bridge. And when we go to these places, I usually have one or two things that I really hope Bill finds. And the retreat of the Confederate Army and the winged creature were the two things there, two different eras. When we were at the slaughter pen, I really wanted him to find the train. There was a train on the battlefield there in the late 80s and early 90s. So we did all of this talking about the terrible, horrific fighting in the slaughter pen and beneath Little Round Top. And then all of a sudden, Bill asked, "Why am I seeing a train?" Well, because there was a trolley right where we were standing, and there's no tracks now. There's no way he would know. And there was even another era. He picked up on probably President Kennedy or maybe President Carter being in the Devil's Den area. So there's even another. He picked out 3 eras at the slaughter pen, and that's just astonishing to me, that ability.
I have a question from the chat that I'd like to share with you. And this is from Carol. The modern American spiritualist movement promised redemption and still does. Would this mean that these souls are at peace? And if so, why is there a need to communicate? Just pondering.
Well, I'm not actively attempting to communicate with anyone when we make these visits. I'm merely picking up on the energy and the impressions of the environment. And as I said, I can only reiterate what I've said is that, my hope is that, this many years on, there are no earthbound souls in Gettysburg. I would hope that they have all transitioned and are in the heavenly realm.
So when a ghost hunter, a nice, quiet ghost hunter goes out on the battlefield with his or her camera and he gets orbs or clouds of ectoplasm, what are they getting?
My impression.
Plasm.
My impression is
what are they getting?
My impression is that it's sort of a
plasm.
My impression is
what are they getting?
We're having some audio. Impression is that it's sort of a
plasm.
My impression is.
What are they
getting? Okay, how we do? We okay now?
I think so. See, there's one of those glitches.
Things. Wow. Okay.
My impression.
That happened to us at the bridge.
Yeah, my impression is that you have to remember that these sites in Gettysburg are environments of such extreme, tragic, violent, extreme anxiety. That can't help but to leave an impression or an imprint on the environment. And I suspect that what people are picking up when they go on these ghost hunts and they're recording voices and so on, and again, I'm not an expert on any of this, but I suspect what they're picking up may be some sort of energetic, and I'm going to use a metaphor, video clip release of something that has been captured in the environment, and then under the right conditions or tapping into the right frequency replays itself. That's my impression.
Yeah, I think a lot of researchers would agree with you in that regard. So how do you know, William, when, or maybe this is a moot question, when you're receiving information and you're on site, do you trust, do you know that what you're seeing, feeling, hearing is truth?
As I said earlier, I don't know that unless and until it's validated. And fortunately, being in Ron's company, he is knowledgeable enough to be able to confirm a lot of what I have been saying. And then the pieces that he's not sure about, he has gone back and done the research, and oftentimes is able to come back and say, here's a link to something you might find interesting. And it's a piece of information that's another validation in the grand scheme of the jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, let me rephrase the question. Do you discern, or do you filter out things that you don't think make sense? Or do you feel like, oh, this is misinformation from the other side, as it were, and you just push it aside?
I don't feel that I'm getting misinformation, and I don't feel that I am in any way being manipulated or deceived, if that's your question. And again, I'm going to reiterate that all day, every day, I am in spiritual boot camp. This is my lifestyle. Yep. I am extremely well prepared and well protected. And before Ron and I have done any work, we have spent time in prayer and setting intentions and being protected. So I really do feel as though the information that I'm getting is coming from an authentic source. And I am serving as the vessel or the channel for that information.
And like two comments that were made on Facebook, Jeff Jefferson and Patricia HN both concur that grounding is essential. And I kind of feel like for me, I'm not like you, William. I don't jump into these kinds of situations. I love talking about them, but I'm not a ghost hunter. When I was a kid, we did that kind of stuff. But as I got older, I was in that camp of, do I really want to mess around with this? But now I kind of feel like I'm able to sort of create a mental block, like a protection, where I just say no. Those things are not allowed into myself, into my life. Now, right. I do my share of meditation on the side and that, but I don't do those things directed towards fending off negative energies. But I feel like I'm able to just decide. Does that make sense, or am I being naive?
No, I don't think you're being naive at all. It relates back to what I just said a few moments ago. It doesn't control me. I control it.
Okay.
I set the parameters. I set the limitations around what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And then the important thing to remember also is when I'm done, I turn off. And this is what a lot of people don't understand about the work that people like I do who are authentic is it's not like they make it look on television where the psychic or the psychic medium is turned on 24/7. No one can afford to be turned on 24/7 because you will erode and deplete your energy across 3 domains: your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. I very deliberately, as you will see in the manuscript I sent you, Alan, I very deliberately turn on in advance of doing the work. And then when I am done, I very deliberately turn off, and I am off duty and closed for business.
Okay.
We have a couple of instances on our walks where Bill has thought about it before we met up. And one of them, he said he saw an ambush. He was wondering if we were going to see an ambush site that day. And when we were at the first site, he asked that. I said, no, there's no ambush here. But when we got to the second site, which was the railroad cut, that was an ambush there because dozens of Confederates were down in that railroad cut. And the Union guys just came up, stood above them, and just picked them off down in there. So there happened another time like that too, where you nailed. I can't remember what that one was, but he can even get them in advance. And he doesn't even know unless you read my mind before we meet up.
Hey, you know what? That's a good question, William. Are you able to tap into living people like us? Can you intuit what we're thinking and things like that?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to intrude upon people's private thoughts anyway. No, it's not something.
Well, I remember when I was a teenager, a friend of mine and we tried to, from a distance, open up, right, and like send each other images and connect to no avail. But I do wonder that if two minds are open to each other, perhaps one of them, if they're sensitive, could infer at least an impression from their friend or whomever.
Remember just a few moments ago, I was talking about mother's intuition or parents' intuition.
Sure, yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Ron, what, obviously there's the significance of Gettysburg and the Civil War at large, looms large in our upbringing, in what we're educated. But is there something special about the Gettysburg specifically, or the Civil War, that you're drawn to?
Gettysburg, I've been to a lot of battlefields, but Gettysburg seems to hold my heart the most. The Confederates came north. One of the reasons they came north was they thought if they could take Harrisburg or Philadelphia, that the northern citizens would just be tired of war, and then they could get a peace. They could get a deal, a truce.
Right.
That was one of the things they wanted to get the Union Army away from D.C. The Confederates thought they could end the war in 1863. It didn't work out because of the Battle of Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most important battle in the Civil War. It had the most casualties in the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that drew me into Spangler wasn't just the 1,900 wounded men at one hospital on their property and about 1,000 other wounded at another hospital on their property. Once I started researching it, I realized that the Spangler Farm was logistically, it was the most important farm in the battle, and one of the key reasons that the Union won the battle, because they put all their artillery reserves on Spangler out in the fields. Mm-hmm. So whenever there was going to be a danger of a hole opening up in the front line, they rushed artillery from Spangler. They had infantry reserves on Spangler, same thing. They rushed to Little Round Top and all around Cemetery Ridge, got there just in time because Spangler was so big and was so close to the line. So, and on the third day, the last day of the battle, cannons from Powers Hill, which Spangler's owned, they started the third day of the battle, the final day of the battle, when they started pouring artillery shots on the Confederates on Culp's Hill. So Gettysburg drew me into the Civil War, and that in turn drew me into Spangler, and that in turn drew me into this book. So
all right.
it was
for everyone listening, we're going to open up the phone lines for you to call in and ask our guests your questions. So to call in the Paranormal Radio app line, that's 85 KGRA live, 855-472-5483 for the Paranormal Radio app line. The easiest way to remember it is 85 KGRA live. And we'll take your questions. You have a question for me or your guests, we are happy to field those. So, William, was there a more significant moment? I mean, obviously that first day at Spangler was profound for you, but was there a particular moment that really, really struck you after spending more time with Ron?
Gosh, there have been so many moments that I just felt were so powerful, but I want to just go back to the first day at Spangler Farm, because as I said, I certainly had no idea of what to expect. It's not something that I had done before. I know Ron didn't know what to expect. And the thing that I think struck me most when we were debriefing after we had done the walkthrough was the very overwhelming and compelling sense of that site being sacred, bordering on holy, and that the average person, the average tourist visiting that historical site didn't understand the gravity and the significance of that aspect of the site. I don't know to what extent people are allowed to walk through the barn, and Ron can answer that, but I think that as a result of our meeting there, he was able to impress upon the folks who are the tour guides and who are the folks who are out at the farm, and Ron can tell you the specific language and their titles and so on and what it is they do. But I think that he was able to communicate that to them as a result of our being there, because it was just so impactful. I don't think I had ever quite felt anything like that before.
But what did you mean by holy? What does that mean?
Men lost their lives there. It was. I don't think I had ever been before in an environment that was so compacted and in which so many men had suffered and bled out and were in great pain and had sacrificed their lives. And it was just so powerful. And Ron, help me out here. Maybe I'm not using the proper language to communicate.
That's good. It was. And your common theme throughout that day was the guides. The farm is open in the summer on the weekends, June, July, and the first couple of weekends in August. And Bill's idea, which I gave it to some of the foundation, the people who own the farm, is the Gettysburg Foundation. They've restored it and it's beautiful, and they've done an absolutely fantastic job. Some of them know about what your feelings are about the sacred space, and hopefully that gets passed on to the tour guides, because you said people come in from Newark and New York and various places, and they just want the gory details, but that we guides aren't giving them how spiritual it should be, how sacred it should be represented. They need to hear more about these guys and what they went through. So that's the big thing that I took from our time in the stable together. And you said that 3 or 4 times as we walked. It must have been striking you strongly that message just wasn't being presented like it should be.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to take our first phone call, and this is from Ron from Minnesota. You're on the air. How are you?
Hey, Bill, or Alan. I was just talking to Bill. Hey, good show on Sunday night and good show tonight. Thank you for your guests and great subject. As always, the question that I had for William is, do you consider this to be a gift or a curse? In a sense, like how you connect with the nature or with different paranormal activity.
Oh, well, thank you for your question, Ron. And I think it's an important question to ask. I consider it neither a gift nor a curse. I consider it a privilege to do the work that I do. And it is something, I'm in my late 50s. So this is something I've only been doing since I was in my early 40s. It's something that I invested time and energy into cultivating and nurturing and developing. It is something that I deliberately sought out. Now, we don't have time to go into experiences that I had as a child and how that got blocked up, and that's been discussed in other forums and in other books. But it is something that I wanted because it interests me. I find all of this just as fascinating as Ron has found it interesting, and I'm intrigued by it as well. So I am so blessed and so privileged to do what I do with the accuracy and the authenticity that I am able to bring to it. And I thank God for that every day. And I hope that answers your question,
Thank you
Ron.
for that. And again, great show. Thank you, Alan, for the show. And we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Ron. Have a good night. All right. So, Ron, are you a believer? Well, I guess earlier you had mentioned that you believe Bill, but you don't necessarily believe all people. But do you believe that people are given a gift, or is it just part of our biology? And some of us, have this innate ability, more refined, or maybe it's genetic.
I do believe more now. I don't know how Bill does it. I still don't understand it. I actually envy him what he's able to do. And I know you mentioned a Shar earlier, a psychic medium by the name of Shar. I've seen her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she seems legitimate too. So I think I'm coming around. I think obviously, like in anything, you get various quality, and I think Bill is the very top. A couple of the other things at Spangler, we were out in one of the fields, and he felt like we were having an earthquake, and what it actually was artillery shells were landing there right where we were standing. He picked up on that. When we went to the back of the barn, he saw white puffs of smoke in the distance. Now, he didn't know where the battlefield was because Spangler is behind the battlefield. That was Confederate cannon fire coming from over there. That's what the white puffs of smoke were. When we were back there, he was saying one of the females in the top floor of the house was frightened. She was getting frantic because of the shells landing so close. Everywhere we went that day, he provided surprises like that. He even said what crops the Spanglers had out in their fields.
Bill, I'm sorry, Ron, I have to ask you this orb picture that you sent.
Mm-hmm.
What's the context for that?
That was when my daughter and I would go out. We started going out on the battlefield back in the day when we were using film, and we'd take the film into Walmart and wait a day or whatever, and we'd get 5 pictures out of 100. But now with digital, obviously, you get them right away. But I don't know, I don't remember specifically where we were. We liked the triangular field and we liked the wheat field, so it was probably in one of those 2 spots. I've also gotten clouds of ectoplasm or whatever it's called at the wheat field, and at Devil's Den in the parking lot, Bill, I got a ectoplasm shaped like a horse with a rider on it. But I don't know where of course I don't know where those photos are right now, or I would be putting them up. But yeah, those photos took our breath away.
Yeah. So can you explain this image here?
That's where Bill and I were walking. That's the slaughter pen. You actually have modern day people. Looks like they're reenacting what it looks like. There were dozens of bodies in the slaughter pen, and the other little photo on the right shows some of the dead bodies from 1863. You can see in the background Little Round Top. That's where the Confederates ran down the hill, or actually more to the right of the hill. They came down through there, and then there's a path above the bridge, and they ran down that path past where Bill and I were to a farm. So we had crossed the bridge and we were exploring back in there. There's a stream there that goes under the bridge called Plum Run, but for many years it was renamed Bloody Run for obvious reasons because of the terrible fighting there. So.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it looks like maybe someone kind of cut and paste those bodies and photoshopped them into.
Yeah, is that what it is? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do that a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other image is the bridge.
There it is.
Yeah. So, Bill, why don't you tell us about your experience there? Because that is one of those experiences that I seek to avoid.
Yeah. I don't know what more I can say about it. It was unpleasant, and Ron keeps threatening to take me back there. I don't know what he wants to do there, but I
want to cross the bridge.
You want me to cross the bridge?
No, I want to cross the bridge, and it'd be nice if you went too, but I'm not going to force you or drag you across if it's so unpleasant. So.
Yeah, I really don't know the origins of all of that, or why it became such a hot spot, but it really feels as though it's, as I said earlier, a magnet, particularly for teenagers.
Sure.
and thrill seekers. And I think they're playing with fire, to be honest with you, especially if they're going out there late at night.
I don't know anything about this, but somebody told me there was a portal on the other side of the bridge, whatever that is. And I asked you about Ouija boards too, because I've been told that they play with the Ouija boards out there.
Yeah, well, they're throwing out a welcome mat. Oh, there we are, about in the center of the bridge. And somebody pointed out to me, and this is kind of curious, that after the fact, someone contacted me and said, "What are the red lights that are reflected in the wood there?" And I didn't know. I'm assuming it's reflection up from the water. And also there's a lot of graffiti inside the bridge, and on the far right there, the one perpendicular beam, somebody had wrote the number 13 with an arrow pointing down, which doesn't bode very well for the environment either. So that's all there. That's a frame clip from the video.
And but when you were there in the video, you were feeling nauseous, you described?
Yeah, I was feeling a bit lightheaded and a little nauseated, and I felt as though if Ron were going to compel me to walk the rest of the way, my knees would probably have given out. You can see even in the video walking in there, I was kind of had my hand on his shoulder walking in, just maybe for a little extra support.
Okay. And just a reminder, if you want to call in and ask our guest your questions, the clock is ticking, so don't miss the opportunity. Call 85-KGRA Live. That's 85-KGRA Live for the Paranormal Radio app phone lines. So, Bill, earlier you were saying, though, that it's not necessarily like a negative experience, but when you're on this bridge in particular, it was. So how is there a difference in the presence of energy or spirits, or how does that work?
Well, as I said earlier, I felt that Ron and I were very well protected and insulated. I have also had, early on in my life and in my childhood, I had a number of experiences with some really nefarious and ill-intended energies, and I wrote an entire book about it that's called Under Spiritual Siege, so I don't want to take up any more valuable time talking about it, but I alluded to earlier that I have a healthy respect for those energies, and I am certain that they are well aware of who I am, and there's a respect on their part as well. And so if I had not been as well protected as I was going into the bridge, my symptoms could have been much more severe.
So you can still feel mal effects, but that's different than keeping your soul or safe, right? Or protecting yourself from an attached entity.
Right. I mean, as soon as we walked out of the bridge, the symptoms dissipated.
Right.
It was really kind of interesting because there was sort of this moment of happenstance there, where as we were coming out, there was this gal that was there with her husband, and they were overhearing us, and she made a comment about when the sun goes down, it's a very different feeling out there at the bridge. And she had been out there when the sun goes down. I don't remember if Ron had been there at night himself, but yes, thank you. But they were wondering why it would feel differently, and I said, well, because it's the absence of light. Light illuminates the truth. You talk about bringing something out into the light of day and illuminating the truth, and when the truth is illuminated, there's nowhere to hide. There's no secrets that can hide. There's nothing that can hide. But once the sun goes down and there is the absence of light, then it's a free-for-all.
Do we have time to go into an Abraham Lincoln story?
Absolutely. I would love to. Yeah.
We were walking down a road leading to the Grove, which is a dark place as well. And to our right, there's a hill. It's by East Cemetery Hill. And there are some houses on the hill. And on the other side of that hill is a road, the Baltimore Pike. And that's the road that Abraham Lincoln rode a horse on from downtown Gettysburg to Cemetery Hill to give the Gettysburg Address. Now, remember, we're a block away with a hill and houses between where we're standing and where Abraham Lincoln was in 1863. And Bill found him. He had no idea that Abraham Lincoln had ridden up that road in a procession to the cemetery to deliver the Gettysburg Address, but he found him. And then he got into his thoughts or something. He could see what kind of a person he was. but kind of a thoughtful, generous person. So you can take it from there, Bill.
Yeah.
Well, that part didn't impress me as much as the part where I picked up that he had a family member with him who was not his wife. And then I got the name of the family member, and also that he had a military rank as well. And it was one of his sons.
But getting into his head, I would find that the more fascinating, right? I mean, what did that feel like?
You connected with Abraham Lincoln.
Did I?
That's crazy, right? Yeah.
You talked about his generosity, his kindness, to people, because he was being mobbed like a superstar that he was, and he was just kind and generous to these people, to the dreams.
Yes, that he was taking the time to give attention to each person that wanted to meet him, to touch him, to shake his hand. And I was also picking, and again, you have to remember, I don't know anything about the Civil War, and certainly not to the extent that Ron does. And I was also picking up, and I would love to hear from anybody else that can chime in to verify this, but I was also picking up that Abraham Lincoln had an interest in all of this himself. In what would then have probably been called spiritual or metaphysical.
Okay. Ron, are you familiar with that at all? Ron, can you hear us? Oh, it looks like we lost Ron. He froze. Hopefully the connection will come back online in just a moment.
I hope so. Can you send him a message that he froze?
Yep, we will. All right, but in the meantime, let's take a phone call. Hello, caller. You're on the air. This is Alan Smith for Paranormal Now.
Hi. I wanted to ask your guest. This is Malcolm from Florida.
Welcome.
I wanted to ask your guest if he has ever had any encounters with other species besides human beings, either current, contemporaneous, or things out of the past. For instance, has he ever gone to a whaling station?
Hi, Malcolm. I might need to ask you to rephrase your question. I'm not completely certain of what you're asking. I have picked up on the energy of deceased animals, if that's in keeping with your line of questioning. And I did allude to when I was a child, there was a dark entity that made its presence known to me, and that was very unnerving and unpleasant. Is that what you're asking, Malcolm?
Well, sort of. Of course, the dark entity is concerning, but I wondered if you had ever picked up on animals and been able to interpret their senses or learn anything from them about how they experience the world.
Oh, absolutely. I wrote a book called Conversations with Dogs, in which I have connected with animals and have learned some very salient tenets of their existence and their very specific stations and their roles in families and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. And the curious thing about it, Malcolm, is that it works the same with animals as it works with people, and also, picking up information from the environments that Ron and I have been. And as I said earlier, it's just receiving information through a magnification of all the senses. I call it spidey sense.
Right. Experience yourself a spidey sense, or?
Excuse me?
Do you have experiences yourself in the spidey sense or psychic or intuition?
Well, I think most prominently was a series of telepathic contacts I had with a dolphin back in the 1970s. I wrote a book and a short film was made about it.
Okay. Malcolm, have you called in before?
A couple of times.
Okay, great. I thought I remembered you. Fantastic. Thank you so much for calling in again. Yeah, I'm with Malcolm 100%. I know it upsets a lot of people out there when I say it, but it hurts my soul that some, not all, some Japanese, hunt and kill dolphins and consume. And, it's hard for me to understand when science has proven without a shadow of a doubt.
They don't.
Oh, go ahead, Malcolm.
They get paid that much for selling the dolphins as meat. They get paid a lot more for selling them to oceanariums that put them on exhibit, and the fishermen supply them. There's no laws against cruelty to animals in China. There's barely any laws against cruelty to humans in China. So there's no standards, or rather there are voluntary standards to which oceanariums should apply or conform to.
Yeah.
But I knew, even in this country, I knew people at an aquarium up in St. Petersburg that went out of business many years ago, and they got tipped off when federal inspectors were coming, and they cleaned the place up.
Malcolm, I want to also, if I may, sort of springboard off of what you're bringing up. When Ron and I were out at Spangler Farm for the first time, one of the impressions that I was getting also was that there was livestock on the farm, obviously, and that the livestock was slaughtered in order to provide food for the men who were hospitalized there. And one of the most fascinating aspects of that was that I was picking up that even the animals were aware of the sacrifice that they were making.
Right. And I'll leave it there. We have one more phone call we have to get in, Ron, before we run out of time. But thank you so much for calling in. And any chance we have to emphasize compassion for animals, more than welcome to do that here on Paranormal Now. So we're going to go to the next call, which is my good friend Carol. Carol, how are you?
I am fine, and I hope everybody is also. That's been a fascinating show. And just a snippet, I'm going to actually read this directly from a website called medium.com. This is concerning Abraham Lincoln, but more specifically Mary Todd Lincoln, his wife. They lost a son. Gosh, let's see if I can scroll up. I'm so unprepared for this, and I'm sorry. They lost a son in February of 1862. It was Willie, the family's favorite. He was said to be very sensitive and precocious. And the following ensued. If I can call this back, and if I can't, well, it's just not meant to be. Hold on. But I think I can just sort of, I'll extrapolate somewhat. Regarding the Fox sisters, which is my main bailiwick, at some point, it says here, history's assessments have never fully captured Mary Todd Lincoln, et cetera, but what happened was that she found her way to one of the Fox sisters, the eldest, Margaret Fox, and the second in the sequence of the Fox sisters. For Mary Todd Lincoln, spiritualism was a lifelong interest and sometimes a public embarrassment. This will, clue you in as to the prejudice at the time. 7 years after her husband's assassination in February of 1872, she was the subject of bruising articles in both the Boston Herald and the New York Times. Each report claimed that the veiled widow clandestinely sought out the services of medium Margaret Fox. There's a New York Times story titled "A Curious Story About Mrs. Lincoln Reiterated." They obliquely called Margaret Fox a well-known lady medium on Washington Street. At the time, she was in Boston. She disguised herself on the Boston Hotel Registry as Mrs. Linder, etc. And apparently, during this seance or sequence of seances, quote, the spirit of her lamented husband appeared, and by unmistakable manifestations revealed to all present the identity of Mrs. Lincoln, which she had attempted to keep secret. In 1875, Mary Todd's one surviving son, Robert, had her briefly, and this was sad, done very well in a play, had her briefly committed to a sanitarium, claiming spuriously that she was squandering her estate on spiritualism, on the hoo-ha that was involved with that. So that's just a little look at how things were in the Lincoln family regarding spiritualism.
That is fascinating. Thank you so much for that information, Carol. We've got 1 minute left. So good night to you, my good friend.
Good night, my dear. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Okay, take care. Thank you. All right, that is fascinating. So that kind of ties that in together, and I wonder if that's an avenue of inquiry that you could explore yourselves, Ron and William. But well, let's leave it there. Thank you so much both for being on Paranormal Now tonight. Really enjoyed your information and insights. And William, for people to find out more about you, where should they go?
They can go to williamstillman.com, or they can go to my Facebook page, which is William Stillman Psychic Medium.
Okay, great.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, William. Honestly, and we'll have to do it again for sure. And Ron, how about yourself?
My Facebook page, Ron Kirkwood, Twitter, Ron Kirkwood, and I have a page for Too Much for Human Endurance, a page for the book on Facebook.
Okay, so I'm going to have to tag you on Facebook, Ron. I did look for you today, but I couldn't find you. So thank you for that. And thank you all for tuning in tonight to Paranormal Now, live on KGRA and now live in video format. So exciting. Thank you for everybody in the chat room for all of your feedback and your interaction. I hope to see you next week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on KGRA Radio, your best alternative contact for all things paranormal, strange, the upside down, metaphysical, spiritual, compassion, whatever you can imagine, we'll cover it here. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. Until next time, live in the mystery. Be well.